we're now ready to hang our second piece of paper. Now, we've got a couple of obstacles here that we'll deal with in a second. The same principles apply. If you've got any sockets and light switches, you must be really careful that you actually paste around them. So you've got adhesive all the way to the edge of them. Okay, these are actually blanks we're using here today, but otherwise you'd make sure these are isolated before you start using paste and water next to them. And like I say, with sockets like this, it is actually possible to achieve quite a good result without, or a perfect result, without having to remove the actual fitting. You know, in certain situations then, perhaps in a new build, you know, you wouldn't have the sockets on, you just have the holes, and then the electrician would come on afterwards. But if you are going to relax the sockets and try and tuck the paper in behind, then you really want to make sure that you've got rid of most of your excess adhesive before you do that.
So this paste is available from Antalis, Graham & Brown.
Right, so we're ready to paste again. Now, because we've got an overlap of about 50 mil on this paper, and when we do the splice, I actually want some paper with some adhesive on the reverse of our second sheet. I'm just going to over paste here by about 50 mil. Again,
it's worth mentioning as well, Tom, that this paste is a little stronger than average paste as well, because it's quite a heavyweight wall covering, so 350 gram. You'd use a slightly...
yeah, the rule of thumb really is if you've got a heavyweight paper, you use a heavyweight paste, and medium weight, medium paste. Otherwise, you will find that if you use a paste that's too strong on a lightweight paper, the joints may pull apart, okay? So it's always worth referring to manufacturer's spec sheet for any information that they can give you. So with the second sheet of paper on the roll still, rather than dropping the whole thing, which makes it difficult to move, you really want to just try and line up and find your, try and get the first 2 feet or so lined up. You can just tag that gently on the top now. So when you've got the less paper you've got in contact with the wall, the easier it is to adjust to begin with, okay? And then just to check that we're actually matching all the way down, I just use this little sort of flick test and make sure I can see the pixels underneath. Okay, if they're in the same place, then you can pretty much guarantee you're going to get a nice clean join of the image. Okay, so as I say, with the first couple of feet aligned, you can really just drop the paper. It's definitely worth checking at the bottom that you're still on pattern. And that one's gone down really well, so I don't actually need to move this. But if I did need to move it, I just relax that side of the paper and I could move it across the joint a little bit, all right? So
as well as having the advantage of applying this sort of wall covering dry, Tom,
yeah,
it also has an advantage when you come to take it off as well, doesn't it?
It does,
over standard wallpapers.
Yep. So this will separate now from the wall. When it's dried out, it will separate in one piece. You'll be able to remove the front graphic in one piece. It will just leave you some lining paper behind, which you can easily soak off with some water. Right, so being careful now, because we've still got paste under this, we don't want this to move. So I'm just going to gently apply some pressure over the splice. Okay. Again, nice methodical fashion. And if we're worried about it moving, we can just check. We're still in the same place again, and we're happy with that. So I'm just going to continue burnishing out, and you can see these air bubbles. Yeah, this isn't paste that's moving, this is just air bubbles that are underneath. And now I come to cut them. So the way I do this, traditionally, the way it's always been done, is you just want to find the corners of your socket, and then rather than actually cut across the face of the object, which could be a very expensive socket nowadays, with a silver finish or something, you just want to pull the paper away as you're cutting, and then you're cutting into the center and you're trying to form a little X there. And once you've got that, you should find that the wallpaper just fits over nicely, okay? And like I say, if you've tried that with vinyl, you know how difficult that is to do. You'll end up with sort of pipes coming down here and here. And so again, same with the light switch. Find our corners. Just pull ourselves off the face of the socket. Cut into the middle, making sure that it doesn't fall on our heads. Okay. So like I say, if you want to be really sure that it's not going to come up, you can just, I'd recommend sort of cutting this down by, so you've got 5 to 10 mil, which you can then tuck behind the socket. But actually in this case, you know, we've got a nice square sort of socket here. We can cut in and actually get a nice sharp edge. One thing with wallpaper as well is it's much, you know, it is much easier to sort of repair and hide any slips. If you do slip with a knife, it's much more forgiving than a vinyl.
Do you prefer working with wall covering or
I
vinyl?
do indeed, Mike.
You do?
I do.
Yeah, you love it.
I
don't
love
you?
wallpaper.
Yeah.
No, I do find it much easier. You know, with the if the alternative was a high grab vinyl, then you can give me wallpaper all day. Especially if you've got lots of obstacles to cut around, it's so much easier. You've got so much more time, repositionable. All right, so we'll just cut the socket in down the bottom. Okay, I'm always cutting on the back of the actual applicator, so I know that I'm not going to cut into the material. Okay, and if you come and have a look at this in a bit, you won't even notice that I haven't tucked that in, you know, behind the socket. So we can now just continue burnishing out, make sure we've got all those little right up tight to the actual sockets there.